relationships and how relationships are important to the Lord. You know, sometimes we think that only our relationship with Him matters, and it is the most important relationship. But He said to love, the greatest commandments are to love God and to love each other. So they're very intertwined and very close. So this morning, what we've been thinking about, we talked about in the first relationship session, we talked about how laying down our lives is important in relationships. There's so much of a relationship where if you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a husband and a wife, whether it's somebody else in a church, whether it's your friends, whether it's at work, there's always that element of there are two different people and there are rubs. And so sometimes you have to lay down what you want for somebody else and giving deference. So we talked about that in the first one, in the first session. And then we talked about the importance of time spent, how Jesus spent time with His disciples, how He lived with them, how He showed them how to live, and how He showed them, there were times the disciples would be like, let's bring down fire on these people. And He was like, no, you don't know what spirit you're speaking of. And next time, Peter was like, no, you're not going to have to die. And He spoke to them strongly and said, get thee behind me, Satan. But when you also look at it, He warned Peter that he was going to deny Him. And I think that was out of love. Because if He would have never spoken to him, Peter would be like, he never knew that I would deny Him. I have no hope. But He prepared him ahead of time. It meant something to Jesus that His disciples were with Him. And He spent time with them. And they observed Him living. They observed how He dealt with different people. They observed how He interacted with the Pharisees. He had some strong words for them. He saw how He interacted with people who had needs. There was a marriage supper that they ran out of wine, and they saw how He dealt with that need. They saw how He worked with all these different people. And so time spent with each other is so valuable in a relationship because you get to learn about the other person and you get to learn how they operate. So one of the things that we have to think about in relationships is there are personality differences. And there is so many ways, and I struggled a little bit, to be honest with you. I struggled a little bit with this message because, you want to be sharing things that are revelation to our hearts and draw us nearer to the Lord. And I'm just like, how does talking about personality differences, how does that oh my, it's so just, I don't know, psychological. But I think there is something here. So I hope I will do my best to share something maybe that will come into your hearts. And my prayer is, Lord, bring revelation. Let's not just have knowledge, because knowledge doesn't change us. Let's have something that it's like, I think the day we really realize, and it comes home to us, and we realize other people think completely different from what I do. Like, I cannot explain the differences. You just need to work in a business where you have a couple different people and how they think of situations. It is completely different. What goes on in your mind is not what goes on in someone else's mind. It's different. And if anything, if I could have that, if you could walk away with that today, with just that coming home to you, I think that would mean a lot to me, because I think that's the goal, is really just to highlight the differences And I looked at my solutions and I thought, I don't know if those are great solutions, but again, I'm going to give it my best shot. It's like, Lord, I guess honestly, the biggest revelation I had was that this was what I was supposed to share. Let's be frank with you. So I hope you get something out of it. That's my prayer. So personality differences. I decided, there's so many different, there's the, I forget all the terms, sanguine, I forget. Very simple routes, and it kind of explains most of personalities. At work, we've looked at DISC tests and all those different personality traits and whatever. It basically boils down to these. So we're going to go there now. There are basically two categories of people, if you will. And we're talking about relationships. Again, Jesus pointed out, he said, we need to love God, and then we need to love each other. How do we love each other? We love each other because we understand, when we think the same, love is not really that, I guess, required. It's just we think the same. But it's when there's this difference of one way and there's a difference of another way. How can we bring those two together? How can we fulfill Jesus' commandment when he says to love each other? So one of the best ways is to understand that there are a difference. There are differences in how people think. How you think is sometimes same as me, oftentimes different as me, and it all depends on who you are. And you think, well, okay, this doesn't apply to me because I'm not married. Yes, it applies to you. You have friends. You have brothers and sisters. You have co-workers. You have people in the community. You have people in the church. And these differences of how we operate and how we think is a big deal. And so let's just kind of look at them. So I used a guy and a gal. It doesn't mean one way or another. So guys can like tasks and other people like people. So basically we're kind of boiling it down to two different groups of people. One group is people-oriented. You will generally be a warm, bubbly person. You like being around people. People respond to you. You respond to people. You can connect with people. You would generally think of how does this affect my relationships when you think of a decision. You get more charged up when you're with people. It fulfills you to have relationships and to walk with people. But your life is probably not as organized and probably a little bit more chaotic. Just generally speaking. There's people in the middle, there's people on both sides. Your task-oriented people are generally a little bit colder to people. You find it harder to connect with people maybe, and you have to kind of fake it a little bit. And when you go into a setting where, you smile and you're, hey, how's it going? It's all a little bit of an act. And you're just thinking, I wish I could be at home in my corner and planning my schedule. But you're with people. And so you struggle a little bit with relationships. Relationships aren't as important to you, but your task list and being organized is very important to you. And you can even go a little further, and there's, task-oriented people are a little bit more rules-oriented people. When you go into a situation, you just want to know what the rules are for the game. You want to know what the parameters are. And I thought it was so good. I'm still thinking about that message that Mike preached. I don't know if, did you all get that? That is so key of, when we look at how we organize things, we can look at what are the boundaries? Am I in the Christian faith or am I out? Or did I go out a little bit when I sinned and come back in when I repented? Or are we talking about proximity to Jesus and what direction we're pointed at? It's a little bit of that difference of going from a task to a relationship. In the Old Covenant, it was all about you will live by these laws, and by them you will be justified. In the New Covenant, it's you will know this Christ, and he will set you free. It's about a relationship, and it's the getting closer to him. So task-oriented people will be tend to be a little bit more legalistic. And a little bit more, I want to know the rules before I go into this, what is expected of me. And people-oriented people are a little bit more where's the party? Point me in that direction. Where are the people? I just want to talk with people. Rules, those are meant to be broken. And that's why I think you all kind of get where we're going with this. So I found this video online. It has nothing to do with spiritual things, but it points out, I thought, the differences of how people, it explains it maybe a little better. And again, we're thinking about the commandment of Jesus when he says, loving God and then loving each other. And this is a real barrier at times. This is a real barrier at times in relationships. So I want to show you this video. I hope it plays. This is a little bit of a risky thing because I didn't try it on this system. So we'll give it a shot. We'll see if it works.
Today we're going to talk about two key areas of leadership skills: task communication and relationship communication. It seems no matter who we talk to or no matter what research we read, if leaders are underdeveloped in either of these two key areas, they will struggle. And I'd like to treat this as a bit of a self-assessment for you so that you can see where you are on these two skills. You can listen to the examples and explanations and see where your strengths are. So let's get into the details. I'm Alex Lyon, and I'd like to invite you to take a look at the online classes I have at the Communication Coach Academy. I'll put a link to that in the description below this video. Most research and practical experience agrees on this basic foundation. Leaders generally communicate in two key ways. On the first axis is task-related communication. As a leader, you have to move your projects forward. And to do that, leaders frequently talk about priorities, goals, deadlines, responsibilities, and other concrete information. And when they do that, it's important that leaders are clear and concise, and they keep everybody on the same page as the team moves forward toward those desired outcomes. The second axis is equally important, that leaders communicate in ways that develop and maintain positive relationships. Effective leaders need to connect with people, to show consideration when they interact, and to listen well, so that followers feel as if they are connected to the leader and to the team. When leaders are equally skilled at both of these, they will be consistently high performers. But when leaders don't have both of these skills, it can be extremely frustrating for their team members. So let's talk about 3 supervisors that I know personally, and I will use fake names to protect the innocent. maybe not so innocent in some cases. But as we talk about these three leaders, I want you to see which one sounds the most like you. The first supervisor from long ago, I will call him Bill. He was really unbalanced and would communicate entirely on task-related issues. He talked about deadlines, responsibilities, the various jobs that needed to be done, and he did this pretty well. And I would give him a score of about 9 out of 10 on task-related communication. He was clear and concise, but Bill was a little cold on the side of relationships. He made very little effort to connect, and it was difficult to work for him because you did not feel as if he cared about you as a whole person. I would give him about a 2 out of 10 on the relationship-oriented communication that he did. And I noticed there was a really high turnover rate at that organization as a result. People came and went and didn't really feel too bad about leaving because there was no relationship to Bill or to the organization. It was obvious to me and to other people who worked there that Bill needed to get a little better at his interpersonal dynamics, but he kept defaulting back to his task-related communication. On the flip side of the coin is the second supervisor I worked with at a different organization, and we'll call her Heather, and she had strong relationship-driven communication. She was excellent at connecting, showing consideration, and I would give her a 9 out of 10 on relationship-oriented interactions and communication. Heather was the kind of person that you could sit and talk to for an hour and enjoy every minute of it. You felt supported, and it was fun to work there. I'm being honest, however, if I say I frequently did not really have a clear idea of what I was supposed to be doing. So Heather was well liked by me and the others, but she overemphasized relationship communication, and our goals and responsibilities were really blurry as a result. And like my supervisor Bill, Heather's shortcomings were pretty well known by the people on the team. I would give her a score of about 2 on task-related communication. We would often ask for clarification and ask for more concrete deadlines, tasks, and goals. But on that side of the equation, she just didn't seem to have that strength. The third supervisor I'll talk about did both task and relationship communication really well. We'll call him Mike, and his name actually is Mike. But since he's the best example, I can use his real name. And he also sometimes watches the channel and deserves all the credit. So hello, Mike, if you're watching. He was really balanced. He was clear and concise on our goals, our tasks, our deadlines, our responsibilities. We always knew exactly what we were supposed to be doing. Mike was equally skilled at asking you how you were doing. He was a great listener. He showed you consideration and made you feel like you were part of the conversation and part of the broader team, relationship-wise. And I give Mike a 9 out of 10 on both tasks and relationships. Mike's friendliness and people skills even showed through when we were all under pressure and working on deadlines. The team was extremely productive when Mike was in charge. But what I believe truly sets Mike apart was that he was able to read the room, as they say, and know when to be a little more task-oriented and when to be more relationship-oriented to fit the situation. So if somebody on the team needed corrective feedback, Mike would not hesitate to be really clear about it. He gave me direct feedback on more than one occasion when I needed it. But he was also really quick to engage us socially when that's what he sensed people needed. He was very adaptable in that way. And I believe that Mike's equal skill in task and in relationship communication allowed him the flexibility to adapt to whatever the situation called for in the moment. So my question to you is, who do you sound more like? Are you like Bill, pretty heavily oriented toward task communication? Or are you like Heather, where you lean mostly toward interpersonal relationships and communication? Or are you like Mike? Are you equally skilled in both?
All right, okay. So I'm going to go a little bit to switch a little bit of gears here and say, the benefit of working in a company is that these groups of people are lumped together in different departments. When you look at salespeople, they all have a little flag saying, we like people, we like talking, we hate tasks, we don't like details. And they all just kind of vibe together and just, sell products, and life is good. And then you have the production and the accounting team that are like, salespeople don't get it. They don't know that we need details, and they're up there, sitting up there watching YouTube videos and just laughing and having a great time. And we're back here slaving away. But we know each other. We hang out together. We know the struggle is real. And so we're task-oriented. And then the production people have kind of a mishmash of people. So that's a little bit, some are standing around talking, others are doing all the work. Okay? Why do I bring this up? Because we don't have that luxury of separating out little pieces where we live at. When I'm at home, I'm with my family. We don't have a production department. We don't have a sales department. We don't have tiny little neat things to put people in. We have to interact with people where they're at. And so sometimes that causes, again, we're talking about Jesus' commandment, the most important commandment, to love God and now to love each other. These things challenge our love. They challenge us getting together and working together in relationships. So you might have, the dad might be very task-oriented, the mom might be very people-oriented, and the kids, you can tell which ones are the task-oriented down there, the ones who have their feet solidly on the ground and have a plan. The people-oriented people are flying around. They are definitely have a full schedule, meeting people and going and doing things with their friends. And probably what's happening is the people-oriented people are not staying on top of their cleaning duties and their other tasks that mom and dad have made for them, while the task-oriented people are the ones staying at home and doing the work, and feeling just a little resentful over the ones that are just people-oriented. This is where love bridges the gap. One is not wrong, and the other one is not wrong. And the people-oriented people might look at the task ones and say, well, you're not having a lot of fun. But I see that your life is very organized and not chaotic. I just always have flat tires, and things are just always a little bit wild. But I see that your tires are always changed in time, and you're not wrecking into things because your tires are, you can get around in snow because your tires are changed. You're prepared. We have those things in the church too. We have people-oriented people and task-oriented people. This is where love is challenged in the church. When those clashes, when we clash a little bit. Do you think this didn't happen in the Bible? Let's go and see. In Luke 10:38 through 42, now as they were traveling along, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister called Mary, who was seated at the Lord's feet listening to his word. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do the serving alone? Then tell her to help me. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things. But only one thing is necessary, for Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Now I know this is talking about listening to Jesus and to hear him, rather than to just be tasking and doing things. But I think Martha and Mary were struggling with the same thing that we've been talking about. One was listening and was stimulating relationship, and one was working and feeling resentful. And I guess I'm a task-oriented person, so don't feel, you taskers out there, don't feel like I'm looking down on you, okay? I think if we're going to fail anywhere, I think we should fail on not on relationships, but we should fail in not having our tasks maybe as perfect, but really focusing in on what Mary, which one was it now? Mary, being like Mary, listening to Jesus, making sure that relationships and love is the most important thing, because it really is. And I guess what I'm saying is, to some of us it comes more naturally, and to others of us, we have to work at it a little bit. And again, this is where our love is tested. Does it mean that we have to change ourselves into somebody else? No. It just means, and again, like I say, my hope was that you walk away from this understanding we all think completely differently. And with just that knowledge, I think you'll have better relationships, because you'll have an understanding heart for another viewpoint. Case in point, if the wife, and again, you single people, you young people, you think, well, this is not a message for me, I'm not married. Your day is coming. And if your day is not coming, you have friends and family. So this applies across the board. So let's say there's a wife that is very task-oriented. The husband comes home and maybe she tells him what she did that day. Maybe. Because task-oriented people aren't as outgoing. So maybe she'll say it. Maybe she'll just be quiet. But if she talks to him, she will probably talk about all the things that she did today and what he should be doing tonight, and with a list in hand. But if he's a people-oriented person, he just wants to get along with people, so he might do the tasks because he wants to get along with her. And he might feel a little resentful that he's doing tasks on the list instead of talking with her about her day or socializing with his friends or going to play golf with his buddies or whatever he does. So the people-oriented husband comes home and he definitely tells his wife of all the people he met and what they talked about and what they did and what John's doing over here and what Frank is doing and all of these relationships he's in. And she's thinking about all the stuff he should be doing while he's talking to her. Just be aware, these things are an issue of where we need to love each other. Does this mean that both of them have to change into another person? Not necessarily. But we need to come and find some middle ground and respect each other in our differences. And maybe the task-oriented person has to slow down a bit and think, maybe he just wants to talk tonight. And the people-oriented person has to be a little bit more prepared and think, I want to embrace the task she has for me because that's important for her. When I do things for her, that's important. That shows her that I love her. So it forces you to think of others, not just yourself. If we flip the switch and the lady is more people-oriented and the man is more task-oriented, I task-oriented husband comes home and again maybe tells her what he did today, or he might just kind of grunt and just sit down somewhere. And he'll probably kind of grab some stuff and go out in his shop so he can be alone because he was with people all day and he's tired of it. And he just wants to work on his car because that's relaxing to him. Meanwhile, she's thinking, why doesn't he like me? Why doesn't he like spending time with me? I like spending time with him, and if he would love me, he would spend time with me. It has nothing to do with that. It may just be that he's peopled out. And he just wants to be doing something that's relaxing and not around people. And then the people-oriented wife, when the husband comes home, she definitely talks to him, definitely, and tells him all the people she met, all the things she heard at the tea party, and how Lizzie Ann is struggling with her arthritis again, and so, the stories. She's just full of stories. She just loves people. And again, he just wants to be quiet and find something relaxing to do, and maybe watch a game on the TV. People. Does any of this ring maybe a little bit true? And has any of that challenged your love for each other? And put questions in your heart? I wonder why he doesn't want to spend time with me. Maybe he's just more task-oriented. And that's where the task-oriented husband needs to be prepared when he comes home. He needs to be prepared and think, it means a lot to her to have relationships. That means a lot. That shows her love. I'm just going to go the second mile. And I'm so tired of people. Maybe he should just stop somewhere at a rest area and just listen to some music and find a little alone time before he gets home so he's refreshed. Work at this. It takes work. It takes understanding. It takes effort to love well. It takes effort to know your spouse, to know your friends, to know your siblings. And the people-oriented wife, maybe she should just go a little extra and understand that I had my time with people today, talking at the tea party. And I know that he is probably a little stressed out and doesn't want to be with people tonight, so I'll just kind of get his TV ready for him with a nice little cold Coke and just say, hey, go down to your room and watch something and relax. He would love you all night. Each other from both sides can go a long way. And just thinking a little bit before we go home and before we interact with each other. How is this going to be perceived by the other person? And I don't think we need to twist ourselves into a pretzel and be who we aren't, but we can temper and we can care about the other person. And we can understand it's not wrong or right. It's just a different way of looking at the world. God made us this way to be different. It is very clear when we look at people, there are differences. If he would have wanted it all the same way, he would have just made it that way. And it's the same thing in a church. He didn't make it the same way. He didn't give the same gifts. So I tried to find some things in Scripture, and it was very hard. Like I say, this was a little bit of it felt like just I don't know, I hope it's a blessing. Let's put it that way. I think maybe practically, how can we help with these things? I just kind of boiled it down to 3 things. I took a shot at it. Maybe one of these will speak to you. I hope it does. I think just understanding the difference is a big deal. There's a difference between us. And as with somebody weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. Understand that there are differences between us. I'm not talking so much between just husband and wife relationship, but personality, there are differences. Just understanding that, I think, is key. And really thinking it through, that person sees the world completely different from what I do. Just that understanding alone helps us. I think another thing that we can do is be open to change. And I know I alluded to this a little bit. When the husband that's a task-oriented person, think about it before you go home to your wife, of how she wants, what she wants. And be open to lay down your life a little bit. And wives, if you're one way or another, and your husband is one way or another, think a little bit, and think not only on your own things, but think of his interests. Think of what he would. Have you noticed what he does when he wants to relax? Maybe you can give him that ahead of time. Have you noticed what your wife does when she relaxes? Think, plan, stimulate, work at it, take notes, at least, and work on it. Like, we work so hard at work to fabricate something or to build a system and a program, and then we just come home and we expect things should work. How about we work on our relationships and we take them serious and we say, I will take the commandment to love one another seriously. And I will understand that we're different from each other. And I understand that means I have to be different. This is my commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this. And I know it's maybe speaking of physically, but can you think of it maybe in what you want out of life? That one would lay down his life for his friends. What if the wife would lay down some of her high task ideals for her husband and say relationship matters more? What if the husband would lay down his high task requirements of his wife? I want the house spotless when I come home, and I cannot relax until that happens. How about you, Rick? Lower the bar a little bit. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, but the slave does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. Communicating those things to each other, loving and caring for you, being open to change. And the last one, see the beauty in it. If you want to have a lopsided, boring house, just have 2 parents that are task-oriented. If you want to have a crazy, amazing house that everybody wants to go to, that is completely chaotic, go to where 2 parents are completely on the people spectrum. You want to go to a home where it's not chaotic, it's fun to be there, there's balance. Go to a house where potentially 2 people are going to have clashes. And what I mean by that is there's differences, but there's beauty in that. Do you see that? There's beauty in two people that are completely different, that can get along with each other and love each other well and are giving deference to each other. So there is real beauty when there are differences in the husband and wife and in the children in how they view life. There's a real, it's like, you just have everything. But when you have everything, you also have everything. And those potential of love can be tougher. I can pretty much guarantee you that in the house where both parents are all on the people spectrum, everybody gets along. I mean, or they yell at each other and they're fine with it and get along again. And then on the other side, everybody's very measured. They probably all get along too. So if you're finding it a little hard to get along, look at the beauty of it. And in 1 Corinthians 12:11, it talks about the different gifts. But then it ends it by saying, but one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each individually just as he wills. It's the same in the church. There are some people who are very outspoken. There are some who are very quiet. There are some who are very dynamic. There are some who are just happy to be in a corner. That's okay. God has made the church a beautiful place to be in, but we're called to reach over the fence and understand where that person is and reach over the fence and understand where. A church that has those dynamics is a beautiful place to be when we're reaching out in love to each other. And to end this, I want to just turn to, if you could all turn to Ephesians 4, and we just want to read that. And in light of what I shared, let's just read this. Let's go to Ephesians 4, and then after I'm done reading this, we'll dismiss. Therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling which you have been called with, all humility and gentleness. And remember, let's read this with all those things that I talked about the differences in our homes as brothers and sisters. And again, we're talking about relationships. With all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just also as you were called to one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all. But to each one of us, grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore it says, when he ascended on high, he led captive a host of captives, and he gave gifts to men. Now this expression, he ascended, what does it mean except that he also descended into the lower parts of the earth? He who descended is himself also who ascended far above all the heavens, so that he might fill all things. And he gave some apostles, and some prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Christ. I think that fullness of Christ is when all the different gifts, all the different personalities are working together in harmony. That's the fullness of Jesus Christ. When you think of Jesus Christ when he walked on this earth, He had the ability to look at Pharisees and give them strong words about their religion. He had the ability to be quiet when he was being hit and molested and spit at. He had the ability to speak when they hit him. He did both. He had the ability to reach out and love on somebody who was being discounted. So it's like Jesus held all of these gifts within himself. But we are all very, how would you say, in ourselves, very imbalanced. But when the body as a church works together, we come to the fullness of the stature of Jesus Christ. As a result, we are no longer to be children, tossed here and there by waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine. If we are that well-rounded group, then we have gifts, we have healings, we have spiritual things happening. We also have order. It's not just it's the fullness of Jesus Christ. But speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies according to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself. And what were we talking about? In love. So God bless you, and I'm going to turn the time over to